Hi everybody, welcome to our video on Hilchot Rosh Hashana, the laws and customs, the minhagim also related to Rosh Hashana. We will discuss many of them in this video. It's going to be a recorded and annotated slideshow, so you're not going to be seeing my face. So for all those who do not know me or do not recognize my voice, my name is Yair Dar. I teach 9th grade Gemara and Tanakh at SAR, and I teach 10th grade Gemara as well. If you want to see my face for half a second, just so you'll know and recognize me around the school, here I am. That is a beautiful shot of me as I was recording this video. And that's basically it as by way of introduction. So I hope you guys learn a lot, and I'm excited to be learning with you. And let's get started. Alright, so we'll start by discussing Slichot. Slichot being the extra tefillah that we say before Rosh Hashana and from Rosh Hashana to Yom Kippur. The theme of Slichot is from, again, Slichot comes from the word from the shor salach, which means to forgive, where we ask for extra forgiveness in these upcoming days of Teshuvah. I'm not going to get into the structure of Slichot. We're really more discussing a couple of the major halachot related to them, specifically in terms of the timing. So the reason for there being a period of Teshuvah around now has to do, we go all the way back to the Chumash, where Moshe Rabbeinu went up after the first luchot were broken and went back to pray on Bnei Yisrael's behalf and came down with a second set of luchot. He went up on Rosh Chodesh Elul to get those to pray on Bnei Yisrael's behalf for 40 days, and he came back to bring the second luchot, a sign that Bnei Yisrael was forgiven. That took place on Yom Kippur. So because the time from the Rosh Chodesh Elul, those 40 days until Yom Kippur, is a time which is historically based on Chumash, a time of forgiveness. So that has a lot to do with why Rosh and Yom Kippur are also times of Teshuvah and forgiveness. For that reason, many kehilot, many congregations, including many Sephardic congregations, have the custom to start Slichot actually from Rosh Chodesh El and go all the way through Yom Kippur. Many other communities, including most Ashkenazi communities, say Slichot only from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. These 10 days, which are known as the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 days to Teshuvah. And additionally, they'll usually begin the Motzei Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah. So if Rosh Hashanah falls out on a Tuesday, for example, so most Ashkenazi communities will start Motzei Shabbat. So you have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah. So it'll end up being a total of 13 days instead of 10. Sorry about that. But either way, the two basic minhagim again are from around Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, or from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Yom Kippur. Now, whether you're saying Slichot for 40 days, whether you're saying them for approximately 10 days, either way, the next question we have to ask ourselves is, is there a specific time during the day or during the night where it's better to say Slichot? So there are basically three different possibilities about when this is, and they really are in order in terms of how halacha and minhag is discussed of Slichot. They're really put in order of priority. The best way to say Slichot, according to those who codify this, is early in the morning, which we're going to call what's called Ashmora. It's about the last third of the night, which goes into the early morning, which again nowadays would be something to the effect of like 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. It's the last third of the night. Again, the night being from basically sunset until sunrise the next day. Break that up into thirds, and the last third of the night would be the best time to say Slichot. Based on the Gemara, that's a very important and auspicious and helpful time to say Tefillot. For many of us who cannot get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to say Slichot, so the time that's most commonly used is any time after Chatzot. Any time after Chatzot is considered to be, again, this was the number one, the best way to say Slichot, which most people don't do. The most common way to say Slichot is the second one, which is any time after Chatzot should be fine. According to Kabbalistic sources, any time after Chatzot, meaning halfway through the night. Depends on when the night is. Again, halfway between sunset and sunrise the next day, basically, is Chatzot. Anytime after that, between then and midway through the next day, that's also a fine time. According to Kabbalistic sources, this is considered to be a time of Hashem's chesed, where Hashem is a little bit more, merciful towards our tefillot. and therefore, since after Chatzot, after halfway through the night, is considered to be a time of Chesed, therefore, any time after that is fine for saying Chatzot. The third, and I guess the least preferable way, at least in terms of how most people discuss it, is saying it any time at night. Rav Moshe Feinstein is of the opinion that since doing things either early in the morning or doing it post Chatzot is all based on the preferences is based on Kabbalistic reasons, and Rav Moshe Feinstein was less inclined to use Kabbalistic reasoning in his halachic decisions. Rav Moshe was of the opinion that if you're in a situation where it's difficult to say slichot either after midnight or 4 o'clock in the morning, or even the morning at all before shacharit, which again the way we do it in school, then you can at least say it any time at night. Again, if you're in a community where you're not going to get a minyan together later at night, or there are people that need to go to bed early for health reasons, for whatever reasons. So you really can say it. At night, any time at night, which is why you'll find communities that have like a minyan for slichot at 10 o'clock on a weeknight during the time for slichot. So just as a quick recap, there are two major minhagim about when slichot are said in terms of the calendar. Some say it from Rosh Chodesh El all the way through Yom Kippur. Some say only during from the Motzei Shabbat before Rosh Hashana, right through Yom Kippur. There is also a minhag to say it only during the Aser Imei Tshuva, which is the least popular minhag. And then in terms of when during the day, there are again, like you see in front of you, there are three possible times. The best way, according to Kabbalistic sources based on the Gemara, is to say it in the last third of the night, which ends up being sometime around 4 o'clock in the morning. The second best way of saying it is any time after Chatzot until next day midday. And if any of those things are not possible for whatever reason, you can say it any time at night. But again, the first two are most preferable. Now, as we get closer and closer to Rosh Hashanah itself, so we'll discuss more halachot that are related closer to the day. We'll begin again with Erev Rosh Hashanah, the day before Rosh Hashanah. There are a couple of customs that happen on those days that are carried out on those days that we're going to discuss. Firstly, although the minhag is to blow the shofar at the end of shacharit throughout the month of Elul, on Erev Rosh Hashanah we do not blow the shofar. In terms of fasting, there are two different opinions about whether it is appropriate to fast on Erev Rosh Hashanah. There are those that have the custom that to fast every Erev Rosh Hashanah. They believe it's an important thing to do, being that there's a day of Teshuvah coming up. Others are of the opinion, no, since Rosh Hashanah is considered to be a holiday, it's a happy day, it's a day of happiness. It is a Yom Tov, then it's actually not appropriate to fast the day before. You don't have to go into Rosh Hashanah almost in a way of suffering and being hungry. In terms of mikvah, going to a ritual bath, men sometimes have the custom to go to the mikvah on Erev Rosh Hashanah as a way of cleansing, a way of purity. Some do, some don't. Even those that don't have the minhag to do it Erev Rosh Hashanah do have the minhag to do it Yom Kippur, which there's a stronger custom to go to the mikvah before Yom Kippur. And finally, there's something called Hatarat Nedarim, which we're going to discuss a little more in depth. Hatarat Nedarim literally means removing or untying the oaths that you made the year before. It's undoing them. It's taking oaths that you made throughout the year and perhaps didn't fulfill and trying to undo them so that you're not really held accountable. Let's discuss that a little bit. So before we discuss the Hatarat Nedarim of Erev Rosh Hashanah, we should discuss quickly what Hatarat Nedarim is during the year. Hatarat Nedarim is someone has a specific oath that they made that they are according to the Torah bound to keep. I swore this year that I wouldn't eat any chocolate. And then this person decides, I just can't help it. I need to eat chocolate. I'm not going to be able to not do it. And again, violating an oath is a pretty serious thing. So in order to do it, they have their oath removed, so they're not responsible for it. And the way they do that is you'll sit down with what's called a Beit Din, which is basically a mini court of 3 judges. A person will specify exactly, this is the neder. I made an oath this year not to eat any chocolate. The reason why they can't. If I had known that it was going to be so hard, I never would have made it in the first place. and therefore it shouldn't be really binding on me because I really didn't realize what I was getting myself into. There's something that you say, and then the judges say, okay, you're allowed to go. Your oath is now removed, and you can go back to eating chocolate again. You can enjoy your Kit Kats and Godiva or whatever. So on Erev Rosh, that's regular Hatarat Nidarim. The one on Erev Rosh Hashanah is a little bit different, and we'll discuss a couple of things that make it different. Just so you know, just the general way of looking at it is that Hatarat Nidarim and Erev Rosh Hashanah, the minhag is not real Hatarat Nidarim. It's not. Why? What makes it different? So first of all, you're not really specifying. You don't have to say, right, we're talking about this is the end of the year, and you're basically saying I have all these oaths that I might have made without realizing. Sometimes doing a custom 3 times without even saying I swear I'm going to do this, but that becoming a habit, so to speak, also might qualify as an oath that you have to fulfill. So you might not necessarily remember them, but on Erev Rosh Hashanah we still say I want all my oaths removed whether I remember them or not. I don't have to actually think of the loophole, the specific oath in the specific loophole. I wouldn't have made the loophole. I wouldn't have made the oath if I had known X, Y, or Z. One other proof of that is that, so to speak, is that relatives are allowed. You can have 2 people that are related on the Beit Din. Someone who's related to you can do Hatarat Nidarim for you, as opposed to Hatarat Nidarim during the year. If they're acting as a real judge cannot. 2 judges can't be related. They can't be related to the person in question. But in this case, it's not real. So why are we doing it? If it's not real Hatarat Nidarim, if we don't really know what the oaths are, and we're not really following the rules, why are we doing it? Okay, it's an act of teshuvah. The whole idea of what is teshuvah? Teshuvah is basically saying, if I really would have known the consequence of my actions, I regret it. I wish I wouldn't have done them. So that's really what Hatarat Nidarim is. All these oaths that I promised I would do. I really meant them, but I just couldn't. And that's really that's what teshuvah is about. So it's an act of teshuvah, a final act of teshuvah, so to speak, right before Rosh Hashanah. In school, we will have time to do Hatarat Nidarim. And also, in just another little detail about how it works is that it really could be any 3 judges, any 3 people, as long as they are aware of what exactly is being done. You can't have just like 3 random people sit down who have no clue what you're talking about. But when you're reading along, you should know what you're saying. Some people do read it in English instead of Hebrew. They do both. And the people that are sitting and judging and doing Hatarat Nidarim for you also should be aware of what exactly is going on with this Hatarat Nidarim. So again, the minhagim of Erev Rosh Hashanah that we discussed. Some people have the custom to go to the mikvah, immerse in a ritual bath as a way of going into Yamim Noraim, these high holy days pure. Some people have the minhag to fast. Some people say you shouldn't be fasting at all. We don't blow shofar after Shacharit and Erev Rosh Hashanah. And finally, there's this idea of Hatarat Nidarim, this minhag of Hatarat Nidarim, which people do on Erev Rosh Hashanah. Okay, now we're going to move on to Rosh Hashanah itself. So the nighttime is when Rosh Hashanah actually begins, and there's a couple of things that come up in terms of the customs at the meal, in terms of lighting candles, and we're going to start with the nature, the character of the day. When Rosh Hashanah is beginning at night, what is the nature, the character of the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah? Now, Rosh Hashanah is a regular Yom Tov. It has, has the Yom Tov Tefillah. It has special mitzvot of the day. But there's one thing that you'll notice different if you're in Eretz Yisrael on Rosh Hashanah. Every other holiday we add a second day, and for reasons we're not going to get into now, outside of Eretz Yisrael. But in Eretz Yisrael, most of those holidays are just one day. 1 day of Pesach, Chol Hamoed, then 1 day. 1 day of Sukkot, then Chol Hamoed, then one last day. But the exception to that is, Rosh Hashanah is 2 days even in Eretz Yisrael. So the question we have to ask ourselves is the fact that even in Eretz Yisrael, Rosh Hashanah is 2 days, is that telling us something? Is that hinting to us that the nature of the second day of Rosh Hashanah is a little bit different than the second day of other Yamim Tovim that are practiced outside of Eretz Yisrael? And if so, if the nature of that second day is different, does that have any sort of effect on how we practice the customs and the mitzvot of the second day? And here's what I mean by that. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, on a regular Yom Tov, let's say Sukkot, Pesach, you have the first day of Yom Tov, which is the real day of Yom Tov, and then you have a second day of Yom Tov, which was added rabbinically, and the second day of Yom Tov is meant just to mirror the first day. It's 2 separate days, not connected. It's not like it's just two days, but the second day is just meant to be a copy of that first day. That's normally. Now, it's possible that Rosh Hashanah works this way as well. However, the fact that Rosh Hashanah is 2 days, even in Eretz Yisrael, shows that there might be a much stronger connection between day 1 and day 2. That might be that there's really just one long Yom Tov. It's not one day, which is then copied on a second time. It's actually 2 days. That's like one long period of Yom Tov. Now, that's the two possibilities for the nature of Rosh Hashanah. That it's like every other Yom Tov, right? 2 days outside of Eretz Yisrael, right? One copies the other, one mirrors the other, or it's actually different, and it's one long period of Yom Tov, which takes, of course, 2 days. Now, why does it matter which one it is? Let's take a look and find out. So let's discuss the bracha of Shehechianu. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Shehechianu v'kiyimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh. It's a bracha that's made on timely mitzvot that come up at certain times during the year. It's a way of, thank you God for bringing us to this occasion, to this day, to this opportunity. So therefore it makes sense to say this on Yom Tov. And of course, on the first day of Yom Tov, you say the bracha, Shehechianu, both in candle lighting and during Kiddush. And since the second day of Yom Tov, outside of Eretz Yisrael on a regular Yom Tov is meant, like we said before, as a mirror for the first day of Yom Tov, therefore, the same way you say Shehechianu on the first night of Yom Tov, you would also say Shehechianu on the second night of Yom Tov, because again, the first day is just supposed to mirror the second day is just supposed to be a mirror image of the first day. So the first day is a Shehechianu, the second day is a Shehechianu. So if Rosh Hashanah is in fact like every other Yom Tov in terms of Yom Tov Sheni, the second day, so you would say Shehechianu on the second night of Rosh Hashanah as well in Kiddush and when lighting candles. However, if Rosh Hashanah is in fact one long Yom Tov, then the Shehechianu that you say on the first day, the bracha of Shehechianu, which we're saying on the first day, that bracha also would work for the second day on its own because it's really one long period of Yom Tov, and Shehechianu is made on the time. So if this is really just one long time period, the bracha of Shehechianu you say on the first night would apply to the second night, and you wouldn't make a Shehechianu the second day. So the nature of Rosh Hashanah, the second day of Rosh Hashanah, whether it's attached to the first day in one long period or just supposed to mirror the first day, has one major result between one major difference between the two. And that is if you take the first approach, that the second day mirrors the first, then you say Shehechianu both nights, when lighting candles or in Kiddush. If in fact, however, it's one long Yom Tov period, you say Shehechianu the first night and not the second night. And in fact, there is a machloket about whether the second day of Rosh Hashanah is in fact attached to the first day of to make one long Yom Tov, and therefore you would not say Shehechianu, or it's a mirror day and you would say Shehechianu, and we were actually left in a doubt. So the question is, if we don't know whether to make a bracha, whether not to make a bracha, so usually the rule is that you don't make a bracha, unless you can find some other excuse to make a bracha. So for example, if I ate bread and I have to bench, I have to say Birkat Hamazon, but I can't remember whether I said Birkat Hamazon or not, so now I'm stuck in a doubt. So what I can always do is I can just eat more bread, eat enough to bench, and then I'll have a reason to bench. And if I didn't have to bench, well, now I do anyway. And if I did have to bench, good, now I'm covered. So similarly, what if we can find another excuse to say Shehechianu, and that would help solve our doubt. In fact, that's what we do. Because our solution, again, to this problem of, is it one long Yom Tov, or is it a mirror day, do we say Shehechianu or not, our solution is right here in the star fruit. The star fruit, again, representing all the new fruits that people have accustomed to eat on Rosh Hashanah. And one of the reasons here is that a new fruit requires the bracha of Shehechianu. Oops. Let's undo that. Did that wrong. Oh, let's erase that. Oops. Requires. Sorry about that. The new fruit requires the bracha of Shehechianu. Sorry for the sloppy handwriting. And therefore, even if you did not have to say Shehechianu because, in fact, it's one long Yom Tov, well, you say Shehechianu on this and you're covered either way. If it's one long Yom Tov, so the Shehechianu you said was the fruit. If it's a mirror day, then the Shehechianu you said on the fruit would count for that second day of Yom Tov as you are supposed to. Now, besides, there is another reason to eat the new fruit, which we'll discuss later, but that is one of the reasons why we have a new fruit. It solves the problem of, do we make a Shehechianu or not? Do we say Shehechianu or not on the second day of Rosh Hashanah? And the truth is, although the new fruit may not be out on the table when the candles are lit, In general, it's better to have it out when the candles are lit, so the person who's lighting candles can see the new fruit, make a shechianu on, say shechianu on that, and it will count for the candles. But if the fruit's not there, they also can, according to most people, say shechianu when lighting candles, and have in mind, have in mind that it's also going for the new fruit, which is going to come later. Now, just quickly, what makes something halachically a quote-unquote new fruit, so that you would have to say shechianu on it? So, in general, in halacha, it's assumed that it should be a seasonal fruit, one that is either annual, that either blooms and grows annually or biannually, twice a year. That's what makes a shechianu something. But again, it's based on time, something which it's exciting because it happens once in a while, just like Yom Tov. The opinion of the Shla is that if it's not available, that you can't say shechianu if the fruit is available all year round. So even if you have a fruit which blooms only once a year or twice a year, but you live in a place where they always have it available, they import it, you don't say shechianu. And a lot of fruits we have nowadays that we would call new fruits are available all year. So it gets it's getting the number of fruits that are not available all year is becoming less and less. And again, according to Moshe Feinstein, you can be a little more lenient for Rosh Hashana, and you could say the bracha of shechianu on a fruit even if it's not available all year round. Even if it is available all year round, if it's one of these fruit that bloom annually or biannually. You could even if it's available all year round, the Rosh Hashanah, you could be a little more lenient, make a bracha on it, because the shechianu you could still have in mind is going for the day as well. Now, there also is another reason to have a new fruit, which we will get to right now. A custom that many people have on Rosh Hashanah night, at both meals really, is the custom known as the minhag known as the simanim. Simanim meaning a siman, a sign. People eat foods that are meant to be signs for good things in the upcoming year. For example, looking at the chart here, which I found online, people will have, for example, they'll eat apples and honey should be a sign that the next year should be a sweet year, and a couple of other foods that also are signs of good things. Now, what is it about these things that make something a good sign? So some of it has to do with the actual fruit itself. So, for example, the apple and honey is sweet. Right? We should have a sweet new year. The head of a fish, that we want to be like the head. We want to have a good year where we're at the head of things. A pomegranate is full of seeds, so we should have many mitzvot, many zechuyot, many good things to happen to us, just like the many seeds of the pomegranate. And some of them have to do with the names. For example, carrots. So the word for carrot is part of the gourd family, and a ribuya is the Aramaic word for a gourd, and therefore sheyirbu, it's a play on the word ribuya, is yirbu zachuyotenu, that our merit should increase. Yirbu is to increase. A leek, a karet, I believe, which is, although it sounds like carrot, is actually the Aramaic word for a leek. It means to be cut, right? It comes from the same short as karet, to be cut, and therefore a leek sheyikartu sonin, or our enemy should be cut off, or in this case should be decimated, and so on and so forth. It's not only the food itself, the actual physical food, but it's the name of the food that reminds us of something we want to happen good this year. Now, some people have customs just to eat the fruit or the food, and most people have a custom to say what's called the Yehi Ratzon. Right? Hashem, it should be your will, Yehi Ratzon, that we should have a good and sweet year. You don't just eat the apple and honey and hope good things happen, but rather the apple and honey is meant to be as a physical sign of what you are asking Hashem, what we are asking Hashem for the upcoming year. It's a way of facilitating us to have a more meaningful tefillah. In terms of saying the Yehi Ratzon, there are basically two customs. The first one is to say the Yehi Ratzon before the food is eaten. And the second one is to say the Yehi Ratzon after the food is eaten. I guess not while your mouth is full, but after the food is eaten, you say the tefillah, Hashem, that, for example, if you are eating dates, so dates is tamarim, so on the play on the word tamarim is yitamu sonin, our enemies will be consumed, yitamu. So you say that Yehi Ratzon, some will say that Yehi Ratzon after eating the food, some will say it beforehand. And what about making a bracha on the actual food? Now, normally when you wash, you don't make a bracha on the other foods during that meal unless those foods are dessert foods. So most of the foods here are not, I should say half the foods on this list here you would call dessert foods. Fruits, pomegranates, dates, apples and honey. These are all foods that are not normally eaten as part of a meal, and therefore the hamotzi in general does not cover them. Therefore, many people have the custom to make a bracha of borei pri ha'etz the first time they eat one of these fruits during the meal. Most commonly, the apples and honey are eaten first, and therefore, before eating the apple and honey, you should say the bracha of borei pri ha'etz. And if you are going to say the yehi ratzon, you should say it either before the bracha or after eating. You should not say the yehi ratzon between the borei pri ha'etz and eating the food. So that concludes our discussion of Rosh Hashanah night. Again, we talked about as the day of Rosh Hashanah is starting, and you're saying Kiddush, and you're lighting candles. Do you say the bracha of Shehecheyanu or not? We said the first night, of course, you do. The second night is questionable, based on whether the Shehecheyanu, the first night, counted for the second night. And then we pointed out that because there's a question whether you say Shehecheyanu or not, that's one reason why people have a new fruit on the second night of Rosh Hashanah, as a way of finding another reason to say Shehecheyanu. And you can have in mind that it counts for Rosh Hashanah as well. And then we also pointed out that having a new fruit is also part of the simanim, because again, we're starting a new year. We want the new year to start off fresh, so we eat a new fruit. And there are other foods that we eat that also have, either because of their physical makeup or because of their name, kind of hint to us things that we want to happen during the next year, and therefore we eat them during the meal. We say ha'etz, most people say ha'etz on the fruit that's eaten, and we say yehi ratzon, et tefillah to Hashem, that these things should happen to us during the year, although some people just eat the foods and just have in mind that the good things should happen as well. Okay, welcome back. We are now going to continue on to Rosh Hashanah day. The things that stick out the most about the day of Rosh Hashanah are tefillah, going to shul, and the mitzvah of shofar that we hear in shul. We'll begin with a brief discussion about tefillah, and then we're going to move on to a little bit about shofar. As we mentioned earlier, Rosh Hashanah is a regular Yom Tov, again with other things involved, and therefore we say the usual three tefillot that are said on any other day. We have Shacharit, Musaf, and Mincha, which are said on any other Yom Tov day except for Yom Kippur, which additionally has Ne'ilah. But on Rosh Hashanah, as the other Yom Tovim, we say Shacharit, Musaf, and Mincha during the day. Now, what makes the tefillah for Rosh Hashanah a little different than other Yom Tovim, in many congregations at least, are the piyutim, the extra tefillot that are added in Chazarat Hashatz, both in Shacharit and even more so in Musaf. Again, extra tefillot because Rosh Hashanah has something special to it. It's the Yom Hadin, a day of judgment. It's a day of teshuvah. And therefore, many congregations in Chazarat Hashatz will add extra tefillot that relate to those concepts. And the other concept, again, is Rosh Hashanah, we crown Hashem as king. And again, there are tefillot about Hashem being king as well. There are congregations where they do not add these piyutim in, where in fact it's just a regular Chazarat Hashatz like any other Yom Tov. That happens mostly in Sephardic congregations. And most Ashkenazic congregations do have these piyutim, which are added both in Shacharit and Musaf Chazarat Hashatz. And now we move on to the mitzvah that makes Rosh Hashanah most unique. That is the mitzvah of the shofar. We will talk a little bit about the physical shofar. We will talk a little bit about how the shofar is sounded and at what time and when in tefillah the shofar is sounded as well. So beginning with the physical makeup of the shofar, thanks to Wikipedia, I found out that shofar is supposed to come from the Bovidae family. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. I could be pronouncing it wrong. And you can see just from this chart here, thanks to Google Images, there are a number of animals which you may or may not recognize as being members of this family, where their horns can be used for shofar. We have a buffalo here. We got a buffalo here. We got a cow. I think this is an ibex or a gazelle. We have yaks and water buffalo and all those kind of good stuff. I believe the horn has to have the ability to be hollowed out, and it's also covered in this layer of what's called keratin, Kertin, I believe. Again, the shofar has to come from one of these animals in order to be a kosher shofar. In terms of which animal, so the most preferable is coming from a ram. The ram being the animal of choice in Akedat Yitzchak. We're trying to invoke the merit of Akedat Yitzchak on Rosh Hashanah. The second one is any kosher animal that is not a cow. A cow, again, represents the opposite. It represents something which is demeritous to Bnei Yisrael. The Egel HaZahav, the golden calf, which was a cow. So we try not to use the horn of a cow on Rosh Hashanah. And theoretically, third preference, if you have no other choice, you can use the horn of a cow on Rosh Hashanah as a shofar. The animal has to be a kosher animal, but the shechita is not required, meaning it has to be an animal which is normally kosher, but the animal did not have to be slaughtered properly for us to be able to use its horn as a shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Now, what about the sounds that are emitted from the shofar? So the pasuk in Bamidbar tells us, Yom Teruah Yelachem. It should be a day of Teruah for you. What is a Teruah? Teruah is a specific sound. The way Chazal interprets it, the way Chazal has it passed down to them, is that the way the shofar is blown is that the Teruah is the main blast, the main sound, but it's supposed to be bracketed by two tekiyot. A tekiyah is a straight sound that's not broken up. Boop. So you would have boop, a tekiyah, then a teruah, whatever a teruah is, and then a tekiyah, boop, bracketing it in. When you see me in school, you can compliment me on my shofar imitation. So and not only that, but there's supposed to be a total of 3 sets of blasts. So according mid'oraita, you would have tekiah, teruah, tekiah, tekiah, teruah, tekiah, tekiah, teruah, tekiah, and that would be it. However, that's not even close to what we do on Rosh Hashanah for those that have been in shul. And therefore, we have to ask ourselves, well, why is it that we blow the shofar so much more than is required? The reasoning here begins with the fact that we don't necessarily know what a teruah is. There either are different opinions or different ways of making the sound of a teruah. But either way, we're not 100% sure exactly that we can say this is a teruah. Therefore, in order to make sure that we get the sounds properly, we have to blow 3 sets of each version of the teruah. So a teruah could either be what we call teruah, which is the the short, quick blast. There's what we call shivarim, right? 3 short blasts, or what we call shivarim teruah, which puts the 2 together, Because we're not sure which of those 3 is the proper teruah, we have to have 3 sets of each of those 3. And this brings us to a total of 30 blasts. So you'll have tekiah, teruah, tekiah, which is 3 blasts. And again, it's supposed to be 3 sets, so 3 times 3 is 9. Then you do tekiah, shvarim, tekiah, because it's possible that's the right one. And you do that 3 times. That's 3 times 3, which is 9. And then tekiah, shvarim, teruah, tekiah, which is 4 sounds, times 3, right? You do the 3 sets, because that might be the right one, which gives you to 12. 9 plus 9 plus 12 is equal to 30. Again, you can compliment me on my math skills when you see me in school. And therefore, you end up with a total mid'oraita. To make sure that we're doing it properly mid'oraita, you have to have a total of 30 blasts. Again, 3 sets of each of these 3 possibilities. But as you may have noticed, we blow a lot more than 30 on Rosh Hashanah as well. So why is that? The reason is as follows. There is a d'oraita tekiyat shofar, and then there's the Rabbanan tekiyat shofar. The d'oraita tekiyat shofar would have been fulfilled before the rabbis came along and added more, would have been fulfilled during Shemona Esrei, during Musaf, during the Shemona Esrei, or the Amidah of Musaf, which is the way it was originally done. The rabbis decided they wanted to add 30 more, and therefore we add 30 before Musaf. So now we have 2 sets of the exact same thing. So we had our set before, which was 30, which was the d'oraita, which would have been done during Musaf. The rabbis then added 30 more before Musaf, which gives us a total of 60. I'm not going to get into the reasons the rabbis added it right now. So now we understand the 30 before Musaf, the 30 during Musaf, which some do during the silent Shemona Esrei, the silent Amidah, and some do during Chazarat HaShatz. That gives us 60. And then there's the 40 that we do after Musaf is basically completed, right before the end of Kaddish, and that is based on Kabbalistic reasons. For Kabbalistic reasons, we want to get to a total of 100, and therefore you have the 30 that you do before Musaf, which is the rabbinic edition, and the 30 you do during Musaf, which is either during the silent Amidah or during Chazarat HaShatz, makes 60, and then we do a total of 40, again, the set of 30, which is, again, the 9 plus 9 plus 12, plus, again, another 10, which is tekiah, teruah, tekiah, tekiah, shivarim, tekiah, tekiah, shivarim, teruah, tekiah. The last tekiah being a tekiah gedolah, which gets you to a total of 100 blasts for the day. Again, this is a Kabbalistic addition, which many of our congregations follow. So again, you have the 30 before Musaf, the 30 during Musaf, and the 40 at the end to get you to 100. And in case there is somebody who has either a difficult time getting to shul, somebody who is sick and has to have someone come blow for them, they can't really stay awake, so they should at least hear 30 total blasts to make sure that you're hearing 3 sets of at least one of the appropriate versions of what a trua is. Just a few more halachot about shofar that we're not going to get to necessarily in depth. The first is that shofar is what's called a mitzvah zman grama. It's a time-bound mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that's related to specific times during the year, and therefore, based on classic halacha, women are p'turot, they are exempt from hearing the shofar. However, the custom has been for many, many years for women to come to shul and to hear the shofar anyway, to fulfill the mitzvah and to be involved in hearing the shofar as well. They still are makayim a mitzvah, they do fulfill the mitzvah, they just are p'turot to come in the first place. Secondly is that you're not supposed to talk from the time the bracha is made on the blowing of the shofar until the final blast of the shofar is made. It's better not to talk. Specifically, it's much more important not to talk between the bracha and the first 30 blasts of the shofar. You should try to minimize your talking. If you have to talk about things related to tefillah, related to Rosh Hashana, related to the shofar, there's a lot more leniencies there as well. The mitzvah is actually to hear the shofar, it's not to blow the shofar itself. So again, obviously, we're sitting in shul, we don't pass around the shofar for everyone to blow. We all listen and we all fulfill the mitzvah by listening to the shofar. And finally, we don't blow the shofar if Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbat. We don't blow the shofar on Shabbat for reasons described in the Gemara. A couple of more topics that you should be aware of that are discussed in halacha, which we're not going to discuss any of the halacha related to, just so you know the topics exist. There are discussions about the Baal Tokeh, the person who's blowing the shofar. What should their characteristics be? What type of person should they be? What if there are cracks and holes in the shofar? What makes it kosher? What keeps it kosher? What makes it pasul? What makes it invalid to be used as a shofar? What happens if the Baal Tokeh, the person blowing the shofar, makes mistakes when blowing the shofar? How long do the sounds have to be? And what do the sounds actually have to sound like? There is a question about what exactly a shvarim has to be, what exactly a turah has to be, what exactly a shvarim turah has to sound like. That is also another topic discussed related to the shofar. Okay, that concludes our discussion of Hilchot Rosh Hashanah. We discussed Slichot from Elul through Rosh Yom Kippur. We discussed some of the minhagim of Erev Rosh Hashanah, Hatarat Nidarim, going to the mikveh, fasting. We discussed the night of Rosh Hashanah, the nature of the day. Do you say Shechianu in candlelighting and Kiddush on the second night, or do you not? Because we don't know. We have a new fruit. We discussed the minhag of having simanim at the meal on Rosh Hashanah night. Signs, food that we eat as signs of good things to come. Many people say a tefillah along with them as well. We talked about Rosh Hashanah day, how it's really the regular 3 tefillot. That in Musaf you have some other additions, other piyutim that most congregations add. Then we talked about Kiyat Shofar as well. It has to come from an animal from the Bovidae family, a horn that can be hollowed out. It should be preferably a ram. If not, it should be a kosher animal. It's not a cow. If not, it could theoretically come from a cow. It cannot come from a non-kosher animal. The mitzvah is to hear the shofar. Really, it should be a total midoraita. The real way is only 9 total blasts, 3 teruas, each surrounded by a tekiah. Because we don't know what a teruah actually is, or there are different versions of what a teruah is, it ends up being a total of 30 blasts. The rabbis added another 30 before Musaf, making it 60, and then Al Pi Kabbalah, according to mystical reasons, we add another 40 at the end of davening, so there could be a total of 100. And that's about it. Thank you all for learning with me, and I wish you all a Shana Tova U'Metuka.